Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of Foreign Takes. I'm your host, YT, alongside KG. We're missing Mr. Big Left today. What are we going to talk about, KG?
We're going to be talking about the FA Cup Premier League results and the UCL draw with the Europa League draw and the results. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it because we're not going to have any football for the next 2 weeks international break. Let's talk about
Again.
what's freshest, I think, which was today's crazy FA Cup result. So today we had Man United 4, Liverpool 3. KG, this was the most ridiculous game, correct?
A roller coaster, my friend. I was giving up, having hope, giving up, having hope, giving up, having hope throughout the whole game. I mean, the loss technically is on Klopp.
Agreed.
And Big Lev, while he was fetching beer for Tommy T today, found the time to to text us and say that this game is on Klopp, which I 100% agree with him. But in terms of United, and what I can talk about is United, is what it showed is that the squad is firmly behind Ten Hag, regardless of what you think. So I think this game really showcased the fact that if anyone had questions about Ten Hag not getting to the sack and not being here the next summer, I think he's going to be staying because the squad is behind him. That's number one. And number two, his contract is up next summer. So it will be extremely stupid by the new management to go like, oh, let's sack him and give him 20 million when you can see how it goes for another 6 months and then get rid of him and give him a proper structure. What did you think in terms of the game, YT? What was it?
Honestly, this was FC who needs a midfield versus FC I don't want a midfield because it was just such back to back attacking, and we were texting this, and there was so many screenshots even in the first half where the lack of tactical awareness, at least on the United side, I think we've talked about this. You cannot trust McTominay to have any sort of take any sort of responsibility as a midfielder, as an attacking midfielder, maybe because he can disappear, but the number of times the kid Kobe Manu was having to cover 30 meters from one side of the midfield to the other because McTominay has no tactical awareness. So it was frustrating because that's what you'd expect in the last 5 minutes of a game when you're attacking, not in the first 25 minutes. So I agree with your actual main point regarding the squad being behind Ten Hag because at the end you could see they were all cheering each other. There's just when you win, there were some, especially the reaction to Anthony. They were he was crying. They were coming. There's a sense, but tactically, I have to say, McTominay is not a midfielder.
The
He's
midfield,
just
the midfield was overrun, and I think they're really missing. I think I can see what he wants to do. It's just he doesn't have the players to do it, and I think it's also part of the reason why I don't think they're gonna sack him because he needs that two more midfielders that would unlock what he wants to do, and they're almost there. You can see that they can run away fast. Their wingers are the front three actually weren't bad. Anthony, you have to give him his applause. He came on and he did whatever he had to do. He scored a goal. He went on the left back position. It was just chaos towards the end, but
yeah.
you can see what they want to do. If they just had if they have Mano, and I know it's gonna sound corny, but if they have Frankie De Jong, who is that type of player that Mano takes the ball away, shuffles a couple, and he's good at ball retention with Fernandez, it's gonna be good. They just need someone who can control the ball. In reality, what Ten Hag said in one of his pressers is that I have three players who can control the ball, like a ball playing midfielder. It's Fernandez, Mino, and Casemiro. And when they play together, it's okay, but when they don't, it's like
It's
sometimes
ridiculous. Quick, just on that point though, Fernandez needs to take some responsibility here because he is the captain. For him to get a yellow card based on arguing and then be on not be able to make that last ditch tackle against Liverpool team was a big failing on his end, in my opinion. I think he's getting a pass because of his creativity, but the number of times he takes no responsibility for his decision making is very frustrating as a non-United fan.
yeah, it is very frustrating, and the way he behaves is also frustrating. And on top of that, like he doesn't act like a leader. A leader, like you can let other people whine, but you need to be the one who's calm and present. They were very chaotic leaders, like Ramos, for example. But Ramos was shithouser. He wasn't this
Yes.
whiny chaos, you know. So he's not there yet, and it is very frustrating to see from Bruno. He is very good creatively, but at the same time, his age is getting there. And if there's an opportunity to sell him and get someone better, I think it will be an amazing decision by Ineos if they have the opportunity to do that. But overall, he's still the top quality you can have in a midfield in Man United. So you need to give him his praise.
Also, praise to Dallo, who I have to say I was expecting some sort of damage coming from his side today. But overall, I have to give Dallo credit. Like he did quite a good job in defensive phases. That like it's like nothing came really through on his side. Like he did his job, and you could say the same thing for Wan Bissaka. Like you can see there's a difference. The frustrating thing is, despite that, they both still like the Diaz and especially Salah still managed to find space in United box multiple times. I don't know. There's just something there that's like this was one of those
I
like
mean,
you take the win, but you have to admit that there's a lot more work to be done.
yeah, and I think this is a cup win, so it's a good result, good feeling, and you get it on and move forward. But that will never slide in the Premier League. But the midfield is just spacious. There was and towards the end of the second half, there was just no one there. Meno couldn't maintain it, but Dalla, I'll give him praise as well. Amazing right back. The way he stepped up this season, and I think him, Menu, Garnacho, and Hoyund are really the brightest diamonds in this team, and you can see that they're the next thing. They're not Janos Eyes. They're not numerous amount of players who stepped up at United, like the Maquetas and all that. They are the real deal. Meno is a generational talent. I'm not afraid to say that. He's amazing. The way he plays, the way he moves, silky smooth movement. He passed by 3 or 4 Liverpool midfielders, although Liverpool midfield is easy to brush through, to be honest. But still, for an 18-year-old, it's quite impressive.
Yeah, top talent. I'm just
Yeah,
quickly touching on Liverpool for a second. I think the flip side is that, we were chatting, Big Lev was saying this, like this is obviously on Klopp. I think it's not just today, it goes back to the Sparta game, like the Europa League game, which was everyone was curious why. I mean, it looks worse now, but we were like, why is he playing all his starters? Why is he playing Salah? Why is he playing Nunes? And it really showed today the energy levels just were not present in the Liverpool game. And I know they scored 3 goals,
no.
but it just didn't look like Liverpool.
Two of those goals were really ricochets off of someone who went in. It's not like it was a very well thought through play, and some of them, let's be honest, United caught sleeping. But it doesn't take away from the energy that they had. It is just in terms of from a Liverpool perspective, I would say that Klopp, I think he just went like, it's my last season. There's gonna be a documentary 6 months in. Let's just enjoy it and let's let it loose. He took the Brazilian method essentially. You'll score how many much you can. We will score as much as we want, and that's I think the philosophy that he went in towards the end of this period. There's no rational tactic behind any decision making he's been doing, in a sense that against Sparta you're 5-1 ahead. Play the kids,
Play the
rest up
kids.
if you really want to have an FA Cup semi-final. Play the kids. Why do you need to play everyone? I get you can play Salah. I get it because he needs to get the physicality back. But everyone else, like Nunes, looked knackered. Diaz looked knackered. Harvey Elliott wasn't up to it, and he's not showing really signs of maybe he's not up to it. The defense was knackered, and that's why United got away and ran away a bunch of times. It's just I think it's this one is on Klopp, and it's just I think the explanation is that he went gung ho blazing. Let's do this. Let's finish the season. Run as much as we can. And that's not the way to do it in this season, especially after the World Cup in the winter that was last year, because the players are just tired. Even Pep is not doing it. Even Pep
Yeah,
is. We're going to be covering Newcastle versus Manchester City. Even he's more thinking through about the amount of games that he has and the energy level that he has.
yeah, agreed. But good result, right? Overall for United, it's like there's still an opportunity, of course, and we should just jump to the other results. So the other result from today: Chelsea 4, Leicester City 2. I think once again, this was the Cole Palmer show as usual. Like, and this was showing another sign of Sterling is a bloody terrible player. I have to say, like, he does like get some assists. So people always see like the result. It's like, oh, but you see, he's managed 10 goals and assists. But when you see him, I mean, the fact that he got booed after a free kick, it's like I think if you're Pochettino, you have to move past Sterling, right? You have to give the kids a chance. You have them all sitting on the bench. Why are you starting Sterling in many ways?
Yeah, I think he went with experience there, and that didn't pay off as you would think it would. But I think Sterling's time is off. There are just a little bit digressing here, but there are certain players that the clubs are very smart at the way when they get rid of them. It's just they know that this person has one. Like it's like looking at a, it's like looking at an animal and going, he has one more year left, and then that's it. Like an oil well, like it has like
Yeah,
one more year, and then it's tapped out. So there are a lot of clubs that look at their stars and they go like, they're riding off their peak. We need to get rid of them. Real Madrid did it amazingly with Casemiro. City did it amazingly with Sterling, with Jesus, and with Zinchenko. Arguably, because Jesus is injured most of the time. You can agree as an Arsenal fan that it is not the ideal striker that you would want to get. Like you would rather get Alvarez from City than Jesus.
Uh, Hindsight is 2020. I do agree with you with Sterling for sure. For 100% agree.
No,
Like
but
he's
do you think? But there are my point is that there are certain teams that are
yes,
very well off in knowing that we can get rid of him because he has a year left in him, and then after
yes.
that it's gonna be down,
I
down,
I
down the
agree.
hill.
I agree with that because it really showed. Because like the flip side is on of that is Palmer, right? Which
Yeah,
is they tried to keep him. He basically said "fuck off," like I'm gonna leave, and now he's really. I mean, he's carrying this team, right? We can agree
yeah.
that without Palmer, this Chelsea season is completely toasted.
Cold Palmer, man, what a pass for the third goal. He is just like he is the star of that team. Sterling isn't. He was supposed to be, as you mentioned before. They bought him to be that star, but in
Yes.
reality, it's Cole Palmer, and
Yeah.
I think that's the mistake that City did. Like you don't let go of that type of players.
Yeah.
But
There's one thing I have to say about him, which is his team focused ability is what makes him, I think, so good for such a for such a young person. Is like, and we've seen trends, and we just talked about Man United. So Garnacho has this tendency to be selfish sometimes, where a pass would have been better. This is one thing you can't accuse Palmer of. Is like his decision making is his best attribute. Is he's a 10 out of 10 decision making. He makes the right decision every single time. In fact, it's more frustrating to watch when you see other players not anticipating what he's trying to do. So it looks like a failure on his end, but it's actually the right move. They just are not smart enough, right?
yeah,
So I think it's just like stunning.
Cole Palmer, he's going to be the next elite playmaker. And I think City did a big mistake letting him go. They have KDB who's running on the last juices, and yeah. But
Yeah, I agree.
in terms of the draw, Chelsea got Man City, so we'll see what they
Yeah,
get in the
Chelsea got
FA
Man
Cup.
City. I mean, it was Man City 2, Newcastle 0. Not much to say, to be honest. It was quite a boring game. It was just the most stereotypical Man
I'll
City game.
give I'll give Pep some flowers here, which I rarely do. But I had this thought when I was watching football, and in my mind, football became this such a game that it's very over analyzed and overburdened by tactics, and the tactics became this pressure all the time, score as much as you can, blah blah blah, blah. Lots of goals. If you open games, there's like lots of goals all the time. And I caught myself on the thought that I've rarely seen a result 2-0. You know what the result 2-0 is? It is we're better than you, but we don't want to waste much time to score more goals. We just preserve our energy and pass it around. We'll deter your attacks easily, and we'll see. If we can get a third goal, we'll get it. If we won't, it's a bigger win than just 1-0. It's not like we didn't
Yeah,
squeak through.
game management
Game
almost.
management. Exactly. Exactly what it is. And I've rarely seen game management results. This is exactly what Liverpool would have needed against United today because they were 2-1 ahead. They could have either went for the third one, which they kind of did and didn't work out, but then they could have did game management and kept control of the game.
Yes.
Liverpool didn't do that, and they rarely do because that's the philosophy of Klopp. But Pep Guardiola, I'll give him flowers here that he did that amazingly. At 2-0, they just passed around, kept the tempo as the way they wished. They gave Newcastle as much chances as they needed and deterred them quite quickly. So it was a fair result, and it was a great result for City. Great game
Yeah.
management by Pep.
Great. The flip side of that was the Wolves Coventry game. For anyone who hasn't watched it, Wolves 2, Coventry 3. It was the flip side. And in many ways, of course, there's a very big difference in the squad. So I feel I mean, everyone we knows we love Gary O'Neill, but I think he was missing five of his strikers. So I think or like forwards. I think he started an 18-year-old who was in his second game. And then he was so tired, he brought, I think, a 17-year-old as a forward. And Coventry, I think 2 goals. I think was a 91st and 96th minutes spectacular result. But it's if all the teams to play now, United really did well, right? Coventry away is quite a good game for a final cup. Like it's the best
It's
result you could have asked for.
It's at Wembley, so it's the best outcome you could have asked. I think I will go Coventry, Chelsea, then City. I would keep City for the final if they get there. But if Chelsea get into the final as well, I would rather watch that than Coventry versus United or City.
Oh,
Right.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
Well done to Coventry. They were
well
two
done to Coventry.
fantastic goals, honestly, stunning. Like the winner was one of the goals of the weekend, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
and a great game overall, I think.
Yeah, very very
So
good game.
we have our
But
semifinalists, so it's good.
yeah, very good games. Moving on to the Premier League, there was, I think, not that many games actually this weekend because of FA Cup and different things. Probably the most interesting. There's a couple interesting ones. One was Burnley 2, Brentford 1. This game was basically changed, I think, in the 6th minute because Reguilon got a red card for Brentford and gave away a penalty. Burnley finally was able to get this across the line. It almost feels like their first win of the season, but nothing really changes, right? Or am I wrong?
I don't think nothing really changes. I mean, and they have 10 games; they can still mathematically get out of the hole that they're in. But I think Luton has a better chance, especially with Nottingham Forest. I think they drew. They lost to Nottingham.
No,
Luton.
Forest actually were able to get a draw in the very last minute. So the other game was Luton 1, Nottingham Forest 1. So standings wise, not really much changes at the bottom. I think Luton is at 22 points, Burnley is at 17 points, and Sheffield is at 14 points. So good results for Burnley.
Burn. It's a great result in terms of the relegation battle. I think that it's still on, not for Burn, and also in terms of the penalty in Vergueron. What is he thinking? Just let him shoot, bro. Like,
Especially that early in the game.
yeah, just let him have a goal. Either way, like if you're gonna like tackle him to the ground, you're gonna get a red card and you're gonna get a penalty. So just think through it. Like, why am I doing this in the moment? You know. But then in terms of the game itself, Burnley, I know they celebrated and whatnot, but it was really close. And Brentford with 10 men really pushed them far. It just shows the gap in quality between those two teams. It's not that far. Like with 10 men, you know, like
Agreed.
it's just berserk.
Okay, we have to admit though that of course Burnley have started scoring when since they took Fana on loan from Chelsea. I have to say he's been a game changer for them. His level of finishing is, I mean, compared to Nico Jackson, I don't know why they didn't loan out Nico Jackson instead of Fafana because he's Burnley do create chances and they weren't finishing them, but he's been the game changer for them since he came on loan this winter break, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be enough for them to stay on, but that also plays into the point that we made previous on here is that you said that they don't want to stay up and blah blah blah. I think they actually wanted to stay up and they tried. They did a lot of signings in the winter, not a lot, 2 or 3, but it is what it is. I don't think company has it. Again, I'm not saying that they should have dominated this game, but 2-0 should have been okay for them to manage the game again when it was 2-0. Brentford United with 10 people in. It's again astonishing how that can happen. It's just the quality is so far apart
Yeah,
between those two
agreed.
teams.
And there were a couple other games, which was really the battle for the European spots in many ways. So the first game was Fulham 3, I think Spurs 0. It's feast or famine, right? We've talked about this. This is feast or famine. This is one of the famine days if you're Spurs, right? You just
Yeah,
can never tell what you're going to get with that team.
they're not. I don't know what they're thinking. I think they'll have to adjust because you can't have 4-0 win against Aston Villa and 3-0. It's just one day it's +5, the other day it's -20. Like it cannot fathom how that happens. It's I don't
I mean,
know. I don't know
for
what to
Fulham,
expect.
this Munez striker is beginning to find his feet because we all know they also signed Jimenez from Wolves, who hasn't really cut it. But Fulham is a solid team. You know, it's finally beginning to click. They've been having issues, but Munez, I'm like, oh, quality finishing, like a
Yeah,
surprise Fulham once you got a real striker. Just quickly, the other top six game essentially was West Ham v Villa. Was a draw 1-1. So really, the biggest beneficiary this weekend in terms of was actually Man United because they've been able to get some points. So right now, as it stands, it's Villa 56, Spurs 53, United 47, and then West Ham at 44. Getting interesting.
United has a game at hand as well, so it's really like 6 points off top four. 10 games to go. Everything is still possible if they manage to do something. But I think on top of everything, the fact that United got a semi-final of an FA Cup that they should go through to the final, it's the ideal weekend for Eric Ten Hag and the Man United squad. In terms of the game for Aston Villa and West Ham, the 2 goals that West Ham scored got chalked off. The
Yes.
first one was very, very soft. Very, very soft. Martinez just blunders getting the ball. It hits Antonio's hand, but it was close to his body. And I don't know why they decided that it's a handball. But they just did everything to keep Villa in the game. They scored the goal, then they scored another one in the 90th minute. So good for Villa, but you can see that Villa having too many games in the conference league, and they're gonna go for it. They're aiming for the final. It can pay off of them getting the fifth spot, maybe because there's 10 more games to play, and they have a lot of tough games to
Yeah,
manage.
yeah. Overall, I agree. But I think the can we talk about this rule, this handball rule? Because we were chatting about it in our group chat. But I think when it's incidental contact for the striker, when it's so obvious in the middle, like in no way did they do it on purpose. These goals have to stand, right? I don't understand why they made this rule change, but I'm hoping next year because it's just removing. There was no advantage. Sometimes you look at it like the Antonio one, it would have hit his body anyway. It would have the result would have been the same. It's like there was no
Yeah,
difference, correct? I'm hoping
it,
FIFA makes a change.
it's just a rule, and the way the refereeing goes is they're very strict by the book when they need to be. But specifically for handball, they're very strict by the rules. They're not gonna. I haven't seen ever that I was a handball and they went to the review of the AR and then they said no, it was a goal. There's no.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I'm sick of it. I feel like something's missing from the game now, where it's like, come on, it's obviously incidental. Just let the game flow, keep going.
if FIFA has to change it, and FIFA will change it in some ways. Just it's up to interpretation, right? And it's very difficult to interpret it. And if you need to review it, and it'll take a lot of time to understand if it was a handball. So that's why if it's they left it up to the easiest as possible. Like if it hits a hand, it's a penalty. But then again, I don't understand. In this case, particularly, it was close to his chest, so he didn't intend to do anything. He just hit his hand. What
exactly,
could have he done? He can't put it anywhere else because if he was defending and the ball hit him, you would not give a penalty, right? Because it's close to his chest.
exactly.
So again, it's the interpretation the way he wanted, and I think the decision of how he want the game to go on plays a big role in their decision making.
Yeah.
So
I just feel like in the last 5, 6 years have been more changes in terms of rules rather than the previous 15 years. I feel like the flow is changing a lot.
they're trying to keep
Uh,
it entertaining, for people
I
to get focused
guess
and
that's true.
entertained.
Speaking of entertaining, the draws were done for all of European games, so we might as well just start with the Champions League. So quickly, I want to let's just like go through them and like let's do some predictions. So of course, the first one is the inevitable one, which was Real Madrid versus Man City. This is, I think, the fourth or third year in a row we're going to have this exact thing. What do you thoughts?
We did our thoughts about it, but it was hypothetical before it was actually the thing. I don't know. I think I would go with Real on this one just because of the amount of talent that they have, and I just don't like City. Let's be honest. I don't like City. Why am I? I mean, and if you don't like City, Real Madrid is the perfect team to beat them. I'll
Yes,
just. That's my thought process.
I
Sue me.
agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Uh,
I was like talking to someone, and they were basically like, "This year is kind of a flip of the coin." Last year would have been like, "Oh, everyone would have favored Real Madrid because they had the pedigree." Now City have some experience, and then next year, if Mbappe signs, it's going to go back to being 100% Madrid. But this year, it does feel more of a coin flip, right? It's like City does seem to have like the experience now. Real Madrid's lack of a striker, I feel like might finally go against them. It might finally catch up to them this season.
so who do you get right now? Early on predictions without.
I
It's
think
like 3 weeks away. So like.
I think realistically, sadly, I have to say, I think City will edge it. I think they'll have just too much, especially with Real Madrid's injury problems in the back. Like they've been using too many in the back for so long, and I think if you put Nacho in the defense with Rudiger, I think Haaland will just eat him up. So I think the lack of a defender and the lack of a forward will catch up to Real Madrid. So I think City have the edge.
I'm never
Oh,
a
I
big
agree.
Real Madrid.
I
I
agree.
know
I
it's a
agree.
conflict, but I would be on Madrid. Yeah,
Yeah, my preference would be at Madrid, but I
yeah.
think City. And then the next one is quite a unexpected draw, which was Atletico Madrid versus Dortmund. When, of course, Atletico kicked out the champion, last year's finalists. Dortmund is Doctor Jekyll and Doctor Hyde.
And the foreign takes podcast's favorites Inter, which for now there's no point in watching Inter games because they're 15 points ahead, miles ahead in Serie A.
They're on vacation.
And they're on vacation, bro. Like they're done. They're done. But
Yeah,
I was very disappointed by Inter going out, and
same.
it made sense. Their attack was undercooked. And before we move on to the prediction of Atletico Madrid and Borussia Dortmund, here is my take of the week. Lautaro Martinez is not a big game player, and he proved it again. He was always not a big game player, and that's why he will stay in Inter Milan. He will not, no big team would ever go after him because you need a killer up front, and he's not young enough to mold that potential to have a manager who can make him a killer. He's already an established World Cup winning striker who's going to cost a lot of money, and he's not a big game player. He showed it again. He showed it during the World Cup. He showed it in any game that he played. He just doesn't show up in big games.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was the I think the final nail in the coffin about that argument. He had a whole two full games plus extra time plus penalties. Didn't do anything. I mean, the fact that Turam was the one that was causing chaos. Yeah, I agree. But I think
Yeah,
if you're Atletico, though, this could not have worked out any better for you, right?
yeah. Atletico's going to go through. I know Borussia Dortmund fans and Sancho fans are like, oh, he's playing majestically. He nutmegged a PSV player. They're not going to go through. I believe Atletico Madrid has enough. Like, this is experience and shithousery versus inexperienced talent. Atletico Madrid needs to go through. It's the best thing that could have happened to them. They're going to be in the semifinal, which nobody expected them to be. And I think the front three or the front two that they have of Depay, Griezmann, and Morata is just shithousery. At home, they're going to eat up Borussia.
Yeah, I agree. And even away, I think I have to say, Griezmann, his is just truly world class. Has been doing it for so long. Sometimes he's in the middle, sometimes he's on the wing, he's up front. Just he just oozes quality.
Here's a question for you. Do you think because Griezmann didn't go from Atletico Madrid to the Premier League club, his legacy is going to be, he's not going to be as great as his talent, actually? Because he went to Real
No,
Madrid.
you know why? I'll explain why. I think because of his World Cup and what he did with France, people see that it's not and he did it in the biggest games and has been doing it in the biggest games. So I think because of that, maybe the casual fans won't fully understand, but anyone who watches and understands football realizes that he was a world class talent, continues to be a world class talent, and I think, in my opinion, he's established his legacy as one of the best players in this era. Honestly, like
Yeah.
truly, like he's just
Yeah.
like, and the thing that I think I'll give him the most credit for is his work rate. Like he's working on a team that is all about hustle and work rate, and he does that and adds quality on top. Just what more can you say? Like he could not have asked for a better player.
His move just to Barcelona was such a bad step for him. I think
Yes.
if he stayed with Atletico Madrid maybe fully throughout this time, he would have been regarded as one of these one club man. Stayed in Atletico Madrid, made Atletico Madrid, put it on the map. But it's just the choice, and he didn't go when Barcelona was strong. He went when they were about to crumble. It just, I think, like an average fan, and that's why it kind of it ruins the story because football fans like to make stories. That's his story. I think ruined a bit, but
Yeah.
he's just quality. I wish he'd moved to United or any other Premier League team.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we were devoured and like unlucky not to see more of him. I mean, I
Yeah,
watched like, but yeah. I think just quickly the last two ties. Another very tasty one. Speaking of Barcelona, which is PSG versus Barcelona. This is basically Kylian Mbappe versus whichever 19, 16-year-old wonder kid Barcelona is going to try to throw at him. Do you have a? I'm conflicted about this game in all honesty.
I think it's the Champions League quarterfinals. You're always conflicted about those types of games. You
That's
never
true.
know who's gonna go through. But in my opinion, PSG is a much more solid team with a better bench and with more flexibility in their schedule. And I think playing against Barcelona is a blessing in disguise for them because right now Barcelona's just a name that's big. They don't even have the atmosphere anymore because they're playing in a stadium that's not theirs, and they fail to fill it up full. Like they
Yeah.
have empty seats. It's truly turning into the new empty head. So I think PSG has a shot here more than people would probably give them, just because it's PSG. Usually they knock them off, but I think they're not going to go past the semifinals.
Yeah, I agree. I think the one thing is I have to give Xavi credit. I don't know. I mean, obviously it's not by choice. A lot of it he's being forced to, use these kids. But when you look at it, it's like Yamin Lamal, 16 years old, absolutely and utterly carrying the forward progress. Kubarsi as 17-year-old center back, man of the match in the last round. Like they're doing really well, but I think if they try to attack and there's going to be space for Mbappe to run in behind, if they try to sit back, I think PSG, or like you said, with another 17-year-old Warren Emery Zaire is like They have enough quality. So I'm with you. I think PSG are going to edge it. Um,
In terms of Barcelona and in their game with Napoli, Napoli just didn't show up. That's
Napoli just did not
part
show
of
up.
like Barcelona didn't overpower them. It's just kind of Napoli rolled over. So I think the talent, the young talent that Barcelona has is raw, amazing. They can sculpture something out of it. I just think they're gonna come short against Mbappe and PSG. But kudos
Yes.
to Barcelona with their young kids, giving them a chance and playing. Yamal is just like
16
I think
years old.
16 years old. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy. I
Where were
think
you when you were 16?
not playing football, I'll tell you that. Oh my
Yeah.
god. I think then the last tie, of course, best for last is Arsenal v Bayern, a throwback, a classic, if in many ways. Hey, Muller versus Havertz. Thoughts on your side? Tommy T versus Mikel.
See, I think Arsenal's gonna go through. I think we've been shitting on Bayern Munich too much on this podcast to be like, oh no, they're gonna destroy Arsenal. I know, like I do. I personally, as a United fan, would not wish Arsenal to go through, but I'm taking away my fan, and most of the time, I'm taking away my fan glasses off when I'm talking about football, except when it comes to Manchester City and Guardiola's stupidity. But yeah, I think Arsenal just has the quality, and they can go through. I think Munich, like they've been so poor this whole season.
Yes.
And even if Arsenal doesn't go through, Munich is gonna be either team is gonna squeak through. That's my point. It's not gonna be like a 5-0 win and a 4-0 win because that's what Bayern fans and casual fans think when they see Bayern Munich playing against Arsenal. They're like, or remember when they destroyed you 8-1 or whatever it was? That's not going to happen
Yes.
anymore. It's not the same Bayern. It's not the
No.
same Arsenal. It's going to be a very close game, and who's going to edge it is going to be down to characters, and that's why Bayern Munich can have some edge to it.
I would agree. I think in many ways this is actually probably one of the better option or like potentials for us. Like the worst, it would have been Atletico Madrid because of the way they play their football. It's like Atletico would have been Porto's next evolution if we're talking about Pokemon. So I'm very glad it's not Atletico. But to get a team like Bayern, who just by design, they typically are an attacking team, like they're not used to in their league to defending. So the
Yeah,
fact that they're going to have to come and play, which is perfect for this Arsenal squad, is like, oh, you're going to try to attack us? Fantastic. That's exactly what we're looking for, as opposed to these teams that do the bunker style. I mean, Porto were experts at it, like as much
yeah.
credit to them as possible. But I think if you are Arsenal, you're like, cool, fantastic. This works out quite well. I'm not saying we're going to win it, it's going to be easy, but I think it's very good that it's a team that's not the greatest defensive team and doesn't have to do too much defensive work in their league. So I have a suspicion that this is quite a good draw for Arsenal.
I would disagree with you on one thing. I think the worst case would be you getting Manchester City.
Oh
Not
yeah,
going
yeah. Oh,
to.
100%. Oh, that's
Or
true.
yeah,
Yeah. Or
or
yeah,
yeah,
no, no, I meant more in terms of like the matchups. Like in terms of, like,
yeah,
of course, those teams are amazing, but it's like City are not exactly a defensive side. Real Madrid are not a defensive side. They're like more forward facing. That's what I meant. But yeah, no, no, absolutely. I think the worst case would have been Man City. I think in many ways, like I
yeah.
don't want to face them this early.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting game. I'm excited to see what it is. Harry Kane trying to
Coming home.
save his career, and
There will
Arsenal.
be something very funny if Arsenal knocks out Harry Kane's last opportunity to win a cup this year. Would be you just know he's cursed at that
You
stage.
know what's going to be much more funnier as a neutral fan is if Harry Kane knocks out Arsenal and then loses in the semi-final. Either way, it's going to be the most Spursy thing you can do. Yeah, we beat Arsenal trophy again. Bring up the
uh,
cabinet. Yeah, we
yeah,
finished about Arsenal once.
that would have been typical Spurs.
Yeah,
Okay, cool. Moving on then quickly, like let's do Europa League, which there's a little bit of a sore topic, which we'll save for last. Actually, I think I'll do all the results and who passed very quickly. So Milan absolutely destroyed Slavia Prague. Not much to say there. Boring game. Aggregate 3-7 score. Dead. Rangers Benfica was a fantastic game. Benfica squeaked by with a 1-0 win. It was actually quite interesting.
it was a win on class. Just better talented people, more experience with Di Maria and all coming on. They scored their goal, and then Rangers didn't offer anything going forward.
Exactly.
You could see that the fans and the stadium was demanding them to score the last minute winner, and they just didn't have the physicality. The pass didn't go. The channel was incorrect. It just didn't click for them. So it was just Benfica really passed on class, but if you're a Benfica fan, you'll be worrying like, oh, if we get someone, if we get a Bayern or Milan or Liverpool, they're gonna knock us out.
Yes, agreed. But amazing game, and
Yeah,
overall meta points. Actually, we'll talk about it later. The next one is Villarreal 3, Marseille 1, but Marseille passed 35 on aggregate. This was actually much closer because the Marseille goal was like last minute. They were pushing. Aubameyang learned how to dribble. Another fantastic tie, right? This was two teams that have not been doing well in their league. It was one for the ages. Like Villarreal nearly pulled a magical comeback.
yeah, nearly until they didn't. Yeah, 4-0
Yeah,
was too much of a deficit for them. Yeah.
agreed. Then West Ham absolutely destroyed Freiburg 5-0 at home. They passed 5-1 on aggregate.
The wheel, Mosey at the wheel, Mosey at the wheel. Where are those? Again, I'm all reality. I'm all for Moisey's stay because he's doing an amazing job at West Ham. I gave him a lot of shit because they lost 6-0, and I thought that if West Ham invested so much, they need and they want to go to the next phase, they need a different manager. But in reality, Moisey is doing God's work for West Ham because I don't think West Ham needs to go to the next level. I think they're perfect where they are. And destroying Freiburg is another, it's a plus for the Premier League, plus for West Ham. I don't think they're going to stay longer in the Europa League.
Agreed. The now next game was another amazing tie-up. Atalanta 2-1 at home. Squeaky bum time. They passed 3-2 on aggregate. Decent. Honestly, two very evenly matched teams that went at it. It was just entertaining overall, right? This was exactly the kind of stuff Europa League is designed to do, which is teams that wouldn't regularly play each other as opposed to Champions League. That was just entertaining football. But
Yeah,
I think they deserve to pass, in all honesty.
they deserve to pass. Yeah, they're just a better team.
Yeah. The next one was Brighton beat Roma at home, but they still lost an aggregate 4-1 with one of the worst disallowed goals, if not the worst disallowed. Sardar Azmoun, my friend, take a bow. They stole one from you. They absolutely VAR stole one for
Yeah.
you. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter, right? Like Roma deserved to pass
Yeah,
here.
yeah, they finished it in the first league.
Yeah.
You almost ate your words with saying that 4-0 deficit is not returning to the Marseille one. But
that
that's
is
one.
that is true. But I think Brighton just looked toothless, to be honest. I mean, this year has been kind of a down year. They're still in it in the Premier League in terms of getting European spots again, but I think it was too far for them. I think Europe
Too
this
far
year.
for them. Yeah,
Yeah.
too far.
The next one was Liverpool 6, Sparta Prague was 1, 11-2 on aggregate. Again, congratulations, you passed, but this caused you to lose FA Cup. I think we agreed.
Yeah,
We said that earlier.
that's consensus right now. I think even Klopp knows it. He was like, what, why?
Yep.
Yeah, kudos, 11 goals against. I'm sure some guy in Prague is sleeping very not well. For
Yeah, I agree.
good.
Not a
Yeah,
good day for all the Prague teams. And
yeah.
then the final tie up, which was I've saved for last because I think this was absolutely for the fans, the listeners, the anger from KG could have fueled a whole nuclear reactor from all of the heat that was coming from him. But it was Leverkusen 3, Karabakh 2. Leverkusen passed 3-2 on aggregate. Where do we even start with this tie, KG?
I'll start with one thing and I'll say this one thing. Everyone loves Neverlusen. Everyone's on their bandwagon. But Karabakh was the only team that went T for T with them in those two legs, and they showed the quality, the tactical masterpiece by the manager, and the just prowess and the demand. And they should have been through. They should have been through because anyone who would watch that red card that was given, it was a fraudery. A fraudery in broad daylight. That is never a red card. That was given a yellow by the referee who stood there and he knew it was a yellow card. Frimpong takes 5 steps and then he falls because he knows that he can't catch the ball and he pulled his shirt, but the other player was in the position to close off. It wasn't what's it called, one-on-one last man standing. It was really, they felt that Karabakh was winning. Alonso cried to the fourth referee. They returned it to VAR. They took a lengthy review. They gave him an unfair red. I don't think Karabakh deserved that red. If they didn't get a red, they would have been through. This is a disgrace by the UEFA, by UEFA Europa League. This was just made to banish the smaller team. The red card is just, it's just abysmal how that decision came along. And on top of everything, I think if it wasn't Leverkusen who's unbeatable and everyone likes to jump on this story of like, oh, okay, they can't lose. They're doing this. Like all of the casual fans that are going, like, football fans in their casualities. Okay, they like to find a story and they're gonna go with that story. If it was another team, Close your eyes. Imagine if it's Manchester City, if it's Roma, if it's any other team that plays in the Europa League or Champions League, and it plays against this small team, and it's 1-0 up, and that red card is given. No one jumps on that bandwagon. They only
Absolutely
jumped.
not.
They only jumped on that bandwagon because Bayern Leverkusen was unbeatable, and they wanted the story to continue. And that story trumps the small team story. If it's any
Yes.
other team, the small team story trumps that conversation. Their goal, like no small team got refed into oblivion. It was an unfair call. Kudos to the manager of Karabakh who didn't say anything. They played on later. They scored the second goal. They just didn't have enough legs in them with 10 men to
Yes.
withstand it. It's not like I've seen a lot of comments like, oh, they bottled 2 goal
No,
lead.
absolutely not. They were
It's
exhausted. They were
yeah.
absolutely knackered. And I think the one thing to add was there was almost a similar situation on the other side, which wasn't deemed a red card. And I think that was what was frustrating to me was the inconsistency of the refs. I'm like, cool, you're gonna give a yellow or no foul on the other side. Do the same thing for them. Don't to then go give a yellow and overturn it to be. I was fuming. And listen, as a fan of Leverkusen this year, it's been entertaining. It was like Karabakh got cheated. Honestly, I think they got cheated.
I'm anti Leverkusen from now on just because Javier Alonso wanted to. He literally there was a cut of him turning to the fourth
Yes,
referee and going.
it was really bad.
It was it
Honestly,
was it was literally made like we need this team to go. Like honestly, they needed this team to go through because they want clearly Liverpool versus Bayern Leverkusen as a final. That's
yes,
it. And
it
it's
really felt like it.
after we finish talking about this, we'll talk about the brackets, and it's clearly seen that the brackets are separated in a very dumb way across all competitions that are governed by FIFA or UEFA. Always one side is very tough. It's like in the Champions League, it's Manchester City versus all the big guns on the right side, and there's like the weaker team can come from the left side. Same in Europa League, they just want Bayern Leverkusen and Liverpool to play, and I think it's been a disgrace, and Garabak was hard done by it to say
Yeah,
the
I mean,
least.
I agree because really, just quickly touching on the brackets, just we are talking about Europa League because on one side, Leverkusen is going to take West Ham, which we expect him to beat. Benfica, and then winner of that game, I believe, is going to play the winner of Marseille and Benfica. On the flip side, is Liverpool Atalanta. Of course, Liverpool are going to beat that, and then one of Milan Roma. But you would expect so it's almost like I mean, it really does feel like it's designed for Liverpool v Leverkusen, Xabi, the possible future manager of Liverpool versus the current manager. It feels like that has been almost designed that way, right?
Yeah, it feels like it wasn't designed that way. And the referee call just showed it to me because Garba was almost there, but 10 men, inexperienced team roughly in this position. They did a lot of what they could have done to beat this team, but everything was thrown at them, so they can't win. You can blame yourselves. They had 10 men, you should have defended 2-0, but a better game management. They did. They did as much as they could. They made all the right subs. They substituted all the tired players. It just didn't work. And it sucks, but I hope they don't get now. That's why I'm against Leverkusen in a sense. I hope they don't get their final of Leverkusen versus Liverpool because it's so teed up to it. I don't want to see it. I want to naturally come. Like I want it to naturally come, and I want you to do everything so they don't end up meeting each other. It's
Yeah.
just it seems scripted to me, and I don't want it.
Agreed. I mean, the at least the benefit on the bracket of the Champions League is that it does feel on one side because it's going to be one of PSG, Barcelona, Atletico Dortmund. Outside of PSG, of course, which are just walking their league as usual, it does feel at least that feels a little more interesting because you get at least a fresh team coming towards the final. Fresh. I know Atletico was there recently, but it at least feels a little more interesting and less scripted versus had it been Real and City trying to reach in the final again or
Yeah,
something of that nature, right? So
and
at
and
least
and,
that'll be
and
interesting.
but it's always like that in major competitions. In the Euros and in the World Cup, there's always a right side that's heavily by all the heavy hitters and all the top three contenders that knock each other out and one gets to it. And on the left side is just this England versus Croatia, and then Croatia goes through, like that type of thing. It's always like that. There's always one heavy hitter, and then a bunch of like seventh, eighth place teams who are considered to be the ones who are in the running. They're like seventh in demand essentially, and it's just unfair. It's unbalanced, and that's
Yeah,
always happens. And clearly, in this Europa League, you can say it's even because it's Leverkusen versus Liverpool, but it's just like you're teeing them up to each other.
yeah,
It's not
agreed.
fair. It would be better if Leverkusen and Bayern kick each other out, and Atalanta stay with whoever Milan there, and then Milan versus Liverpool final would have been also
Yes,
pretty good to see. But you don't do that. They have enough quality in Europa League. They just don't do that because they want Leverkusen versus Bayern, and I hope Milan knock out either one of them, whoever they meet in the way. I'm just all
Agreed.
for it. Um,
Agreed.
I had a question for you before we move on, and we're still on the topic, and I'm very butthurt. But I had a question for you. If Leverkusen never lose now in all competitions, by the way, if they win the treble and they don't lose, does that take away from Arsenal's Invincibles? Will Arsenal's Invincibles? I know it's the Premier League and all that, but like now that people are going to be like, "Oh, Invincibles, no one has ever done that," they're gonna put this trump card of Leverkusen. They won the Europa League final, never unbeaten, won the Bundesliga unbeaten. If that happened.
Maybe. I think it'll. I'm not gonna say explicitly yes or no. I think it'll be in contention. Like I'm not gonna be like dismissive and be like, because it's Bundesliga, it's much easier, yada yada. It would be incredible. I think we all agree. I think I would put them as like A1 and AB, not like number one and number two. I think that's the way I would do it, and I think it would be fair for. I know this is like not a this is a balanced take, but I don't know how else to put it. I think you could say pros for each one. That Leverkusen's run is better or Arsenal's is better, but I think they're both acceptable. I think it would be like A1 and AB, to be
But
honest.
I think
Sorry, one A, one B.
it will take away from the argument of like Arsenal fans that they did about the Invincibles. Like nobody has ever done it, nobody will ever do it ever. That was one of the arguments
I
that
think that
Arsenal
the
fans
argument
did.
there is no one will ever do it in the Premier League, right? I think you
Yeah,
can absolutely do it. I mean, if you're PSG, I'm surprised they haven't done it. If you're Bayern, like I think the discrepancy in all the non-PL leagues, like non-Premier League, sorry, non-English leagues, are
yeah.
much higher. So I don't think it takes any. Like, do you think it'll ever happen in the Premier League? No, there's no chance. It's way too competitive to happen in the Premier
You
League.
never know. I'm gonna say it's you never know because Leicester won and you would never expect that in your lifetime, and that happened. I think, in my opinion, the Invincibles of Arsenal's are not as an amazing feat in comparison. I would put it second, and I would put first Jose Mourinho's Chelsea when they lost one game and they conceded 15 goals. That is crazy. To concede 15 goals in the Premier League right now, there's never going to be a team who's done it. And Barcelona did it last year, but I know it's Barcelona, but they still lost a bunch of games. They didn't
Yes.
lose one. But Chelsea's Mourinho, they were unbeatable at home, conceded 15 goals, and lost one game. I think that is more of a defensive example of this is a team that you can't beat rather than Arsenal who had 13 draws, last minute draws, conceded a bunch. It's still a great achievement that they didn't lose, but I would put it second behind Chelsea,
Oh,
in my
interesting.
opinion.
Yeah, fair enough. Listen, I mean, that Chelsea team at home for what those 2.5, 3 years, whatever it was brutal, right? It was like when people talk about a fortress, there has never been a better example
Yeah,
of a fortress than that Chelsea team at home, right? There was
yeah,
nothing you could do. So yeah, I think it's fair enough. I mean, obviously, I disagree. I think nothing matches an unbeaten season. Where I think if it was unbeaten and you didn't win the league, I wouldn't count it, right? Because it's
yeah,
like, cool, you got 40 draws, congratulations, like you didn't win the. But I think for the fact that they won it unbeaten says something. I think it's like I personally don't think we'll ever see that again. Like unbeaten run. Like I think the Premier League is just too even, too many derbies, too
yeah,
much quality that it's just never gonna happen. And also, I think
yeah,
with regards to the Leverkusen thing, though, I actually do think it's possible for them to do it in the Bundesliga. But the truth is, you look at like a lot of the I think the quality gap is just too much in terms of the Bundesliga. I think
yeah,
it's like really. I would be shocked if I look at the rest of their run in. I would be shocked if they lost any of their games. I think if they do lose, it'll be one of those unexpected ones, like a last minute winner, last minute
yeah.
header, some terrible ref decision. It would be something of that nature. I think
Oh,
on a
some
balance
terrible
between
ref decision. Now I wonder how that would feel. Uh,
honestly, it would be karma for it, and that's why
yeah,
I hope they don't take the Europa League. I think someone else should take it. But yeah,
yeah. Even
overall,
if they do take Europa League, I think it's gonna be a much. Like if they win a Europa League and they got unbeatable win at home, it's gonna be
oh,
one for the history books.
history books,
That's
and
what they're gonna.
deservedly, rightly so, right? It's like that would be a shocking. I mean, the number of games that they've come back to within the 90+ minutes is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Um,
And to wrap up, here is more of a foreign takes. Another question that I had for you here, stealing the idea from the another podcast that I saw, and they were talking about football villains. But I had a specific question for you again. Who would you rather? Who would you take as a villain for you? Who's more of a villain in your sense, from an Arsenal fan perspective? Van Persie or Adebayor?
uh, two snakes. Let me tell you, snakes. That's actually a good question. Okay, so I'm gonna answer first and give my justification. I think Adebayor is more of a snake, and I'll explain why. With Van Persie, he did a terrible decision. He went to our biggest competitors in after we had literally given him so many opportunities. He had been injured for years. The one season he was able to stay healthy, he showed what he was able to do, and then he absolutely abandoned us to go to our rivals. The only silver lining, not silver lining, the only maybe justification for that is that, we weren't progressing. We saw how we dipped afterwards. So in many ways, you can see it's like maybe understandable. He wants to win. We didn't have the right mentality. Something of that nature. Unlike that dipshit Adebayo, whose disrespect to do what he did, to talk the way he did, that slide, it's like he played for Spurs. I think unforgivable. Like Adebayo, like they're both unforgivable. They're also similar to if we're talking about which one is a better run, Invincible run is like would it be Arsenal Invincible run or Leverkusen if they do it? It's like 1A and 1B. I think that's the way I would describe them. They're 1A and 1B in terms of being snakes, but I would give a slight edge to Adebayo. I dislike that man to my very core. I will never ever forgive
If I was an Arsenal fan, and I'm not by far, I would
him.
put Adebayor as the number one, because I get Van. You can get why Van Persie did it. He stayed for a long time at Arsenal, and then he was like, "Yo, I need to win something," and he was a very selfish decision. He
Yes, very
he
selfish.
cut a lot of cords there, but he played 2 years at Man United and won the Premier League. You kind of go like, okay, if you really like the player, you could see how good it was for him. Like, like you can forgive him partially, but you never let him back in the house, essentially. But Adebayo, man, after that, he did that celebration, ran across the pitch. You would never forgive that man, my friend.
Never.
You would never. And then he played for Spurs as well, so never.
That's the thing. That's why I think the bad blood, in my opinion, yeah, Adebayo, never. Will never,
Adebayo,
ever.
Adebayo and Carlos Tevez are here in my books. Carlos Tevez, my man.
Yeah. I think there's no one besides Tevez for you guys, honestly
Yeah.
speaking.
No, there is one who we hate, but it's not an internal Premier League thing. I think the second most hated player, apart from Tevez, from a United fan perspective, is Di Maria. They dislike Di
Oh
Maria because
yeah,
Di Maria
they
came.
really did.
He didn't want to come. He came. I mean, I get it. It was a bad marriage for him as well because his house got broken into. But and he didn't like Van Gaal. But the way he treated the fans and the way he spoke after about the club and the fans, like you can speak about the clubs and the managers and whatnot, but speaking about the fans like that put them in just in the wrong books. And he was. I haven't seen anyone booed as badly as Di Maria when he came in and played, and the way people tackled him, it was just
Terrible.
beautiful.
This also, if you're him, I'm just like, why talk about the fans? Talk about everything but the fans. It's like the
Yeah.
fans are there. The fans would have actually understood. It's like, hey, you're not from this place. You don't speak the language. You don't like the manager. Your house. They would have understood it. I think. I'm not saying they would have forgiven it. They would have understood. But to talk shit to to a fan base that you play for, I think was that. That's
Yeah.
the part I think that made him push him past.
It's very difficult for me because I think Angel Di Maria is a very talented player, and I think he was much more pivotal in Argentina getting to the two World Cup finals than Messi, which is an understatement because I think he dragged the
Yes.
2014 World Cup when they went to the final and lost to Germany. He dragged them when Messi couldn't do anything, and then this World Cup he was a very supplemental second fiddle that was the experience next to Messi. And if it wasn't him, maybe Messi couldn't have reached the World Cup, and he gets overlooked of that because of that. So it's very tough for me to say it, but he is a big snake in terms of a United fan. I will never give him. I will give him the flowers because he was
Yeah.
just his
Terrible.
terrible.
Bad way to end.
Yeah.
I think that's a wrap for us. Next week we're gonna do a quick preview of the run-in of the Premier League and a quick preview of essentially just going through what we think is going to happen for the rest of the seasons for the rest of the leagues. Who's going to get second spot in Serie A? Is Milan finally going to take it? Is Allegri's time's done? But that's a goodbye from us.
Yeah, and we're gonna be just reviewing everything what happens in the next week. So enjoy the not lengthy, but I would say an easier week of football as we're gonna see Gareth Southgate masterclass soon. So
On that note, goodbye.
peace.